Great.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another conversation with Carl. Today, we're getting thankful. Today, we welcome Pastor Jesse Bradley to the conversation. But before we get started, please remember to like and subscribe. As we head into the holidays, how can we have a holiday that lives up to love and joy and leaves all that petty nonsense at the door? Can a family join together who does not align politically? My next guest is here to tell us it is possible. Jesse literally turned his life around from one of struggle to one of feeling of complete gratitude and service, and he is here to tell us how. Welcome, Pastor Jesse Bradley, to the conversation.
Carl, thanks so much. It's an honor to be here, and I've been looking forward to this time together.
No, I'm very excited to have you here. Let me get started by tell me your story, because I find your story fascinating. You were a soccer player in Africa, and then you became a pastor.
Yes.
How did that go?
Right. That's not typical. Carl, I love your introduction. I come from a family that's kind of like Baskin Robbins, 31 flavors spiritually. So we've got a little bit of everything and we really love each other. We're so close. And similarly, politically across the spectrum, we represent just about all positions. But for me growing up, I was an atheist. My parents got divorced when I was 7. My world was academics, athletics, and then there's a lot of friends. I went to Dartmouth College, played soccer there. I was a goalkeeper. And we won, Ivy League titles. Things looked good on the outside, but on the inside, something was missing. So I was an atheist. I took a religion class. They assigned the Gospel of John, a lot of different texts, and I'd never read the Bible before, so I was curious, asked hundreds of questions, kicked the tires, wanted to see evidence. And at Dartmouth, that's where I decided, I'm going to follow Jesus, and it was all grace. It's not achieved and earned. It's a relationship. And my dream since I was 2 years old was to play professional sports. Told my parents that. Some people know early in life. And then after college, I played overseas, Scotland, Africa. In Africa, I took a prescribed medication, and it was to prevent malaria. What was supposed to protect me was actually killing me because toxic levels of the drug in my system. And it was like a bad trip and an overdose. And I ended up fighting for my life for 1 year, 10 years to fully recover. And now I can say, Carl, I didn't find hope until I lost it. And it's at that lowest point in life. And that's where I discovered a hope I think that's available to everyone, that's indestructible, it's personal. I love to talk about hope because I think there's habits we can cultivate and grow in hope. And there's a hope greater than our challenges. And so I never expected to be in the position I'm in. I serve as a chaplain with the Seattle Sounders and MLS and under 20 men's national team. I enjoy being a pastor. I think you don't have to be a pastor to be spiritual or be close to God. And so I don't see myself different in that way from other people. I think we're all equal. We're all growing. We're all learning. And I wake up every day excited about what I'm doing. Seattle's a unique city, the least religious city in America. So it's a lively place and I like the conversations.
So how do you find hope when because a lot of people are looking right now, we're getting ready to get together with our family members. Some people are anxious about it. Some people are worried that they're going to walk in and it's going to be Trump versus the woke left. How do you find, how do you take down the anxiety level?
And Carl, I don't deny any of those realities. I think it's important to face those and be aware of those, not naive. And this isn't like a blind hope. We know that there's tension in families. Sometimes the holiday is the most difficult times of the year. There could be a loved one that's not there anymore. It could be strife. The family used to be close. And we're perplexed and we're thinking, what are we going to do with the family get together? And I think there's a hope that's greater than those challenges. But what is hope? Hope is a confident and joyful trust in someone or something. And it's a choice, just like in a boat, you decide where to drop the anchor. You decide what's the source of your hope? Where are you going to find hope? And, I was struggling with hope and struggling with my identity after this situation in Africa and this tragedy, because I thought, okay, I no longer have a career. I don't have my health. My mental health was fluctuating. I had panic attacks, depression. I didn't have a backup plan for a career, without friends around. It's like, where am I going to find hope? Is it just hopeless? And that was the lie every day, just coming in. It's not going to get better. There's no hope. There's nothing you can do. And now I call it the power of the second thought. Carl, at the time, it was just survival mode. And what I realized is we have thousands of first thoughts every day. We don't have to believe, harbor, or entertain those. But hope really starts between the ears and winning that battle of the mind. I can reject the first thoughts that aren't good. the first thoughts that are negative, that are false, that are selfish, that are hopeless, and instead replace it with a second thought that's intentional. And that renewing of the mind. There's a verse in the Bible that says, perfect love drives out fear. 365 times, do not fear. Why? It's because every day we can move towards anxiety, but we don't have to. We can have peace. And when you have an intentional second thought, that's what you camp on. That's what you think about. And we can all be in that mode. On the soccer pitch, I would keep the ball out of the back of net. I was a goalkeeper. But then in my recovery and restoration, I was in that same mode, except keeping those thoughts out of my mind. And so you might feel resentment. You might have those feelings and those thoughts and bitterness towards family. But freedom is when you forgive everyone fully. And, I
So
held.
how do you so you walk into your family's house, you get there, and there is, before you even start, all your childhood
Mm.
nonsense all comes back, everything that you've had, and now everyone's in a different political camp and it all starts. And how do you walk in there and say, I forgive you? Because that's a really hard thing to do.
Yes, absolutely. And let's start out with the smaller, the micro, and then move to the bigger ones, the macro. You don't have control of what everyone's going to say. Some families are less healthy than others. I think the more kind of toxic the conversation is, the more you got to be simple and kind. You might need to redirect. Someone wants to go all out on their political rant, and you might need to say, hey, appreciate your honesty, but let's just keep Thanksgiving, about, building each other up, or about family, or let's tell some positive stories, or, you put a limit on some things. Putting limits, not everyone likes it, but it's healthy. It protects. Or even ahead of time, you say to the family, hey, this year, let's not dive deep into politics when we gather around. In our family, we like to go around the table and everyone shares one thing they're thankful for. So it can be something intentional like that. We also go around the table and say, what do you appreciate about the other people here?
So what happens if you're sitting around the table and somebody goes, I'm thankful for Trump, I'm thankful for Mandami?
Yes, that happens. And you almost have to laugh a little bit. Don't take yourself too seriously. But at the same time, really what you need is a greater love. Because what we're not great in America right now is loving people who might disagree with us or look different than us or talk different than us. And so what do you do in those situations? Love doesn't mean you're naive, but it means that you're going to see everyone in God's image. I think faith leads to love. Everyone's wonderfully made. You appreciate everyone. Everyone has value. Everyone has significance. And when you start to see people like that and then hear their stories, some people are wounded along the way. When I say forgive, that's a decision. And for me, when I discover God forgave me all my sins, I forgave everyone their sins. And I have to go back and I just internally sometimes say, I forgive you. But that healing is a process. And there's a lot of triggers with family. I'm not saying it's going to be easy or there aren't deep wounds. What they did was wrong. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you're best friends or that even that the other person's safe. You might need to keep some distance within family. But it means, Carl, that you're going to let go of resentment and bitterness and revenge. And you've got to check your heart because that's what you have control over. Control the controllables. You decide what you're going to think about and dwell on. You decide if you're going to forgive other people. You choose your attitude, and then you choose how to respond. And I think, Carl, in those situations, there's either lighter fluid or water. And when those topics come up, you're going to grab the water and you're going to de-escalate, or you're going to grab the lighter fluid, and here it goes. You're going to burn the place down. And every response, a gentle answer turns away wrath. King Solomon said that. It's brilliant. That could be your second thought for your family get together. A gentle answer is going to turn down the wrath. So that's what I'm going to bring. It's like you can put some of those conversations in the parking lot. Say, hey, that's a great topic. I know there's a lot of passion here, but let's do that after Thanksgiving. Just to, again, in a nice way, you're just moving it away because ultimately you want the holiday to be about love and closeness and unity and peace, and you've got to protect that. Whatever you value, you protect it and you guard it, and you can set the culture. Don't come in passive like, oh, there's nothing I can do. No, you can be part of the solution. And just like you set the thermostat on the temperature, you set the temperature in the room. And when you bring love, you bring out the best in other people. So, hey, uncle, tell me that story again. Hey, how did you two meet? Hey, what have you enjoyed this last year? What are you thankful for today? Ask some questions and kind of redirect the conversation.
because we all get together for Thanksgiving, and then we're going to get together a month from now. Is and for Christmas, for Hanukkah, everyone's going to start to do get together again. So it's a repeat. So how do we make sure that in holiday 2.0, it's going to be different than holiday 1.0 if we're having this? Because I see this
Yeah.
conversation online. I see it a lot of people saying, I'm not having them over. I'm
Mm.
not talking to you. You're not talking to me. And I think that's all we really have is our family.
Right. And those memories that you make together. I mean, our family growing up, we celebrate Hanukkah, we celebrate Christmas, and you can start with good food because everyone appreciates good food. So find some common ground that everyone's going to enjoy. You might need to put a time limit on it. You might need to say, hey, we're going to be there for 2 hours this time. I know not everyone wants a round two, a round three. And then when you throw in laws in there, it can get more complex, like who's going to be in which places and how long. Gotta rise above it though. You can't get caught in the traps. You're gonna know the classic traps if you know your family. Like this person's gonna complain a lot. This person's gonna want to talk politics. This person's gonna bring up 10 years ago. Sometimes you can connect with those people ahead of time and say, hey, let's not go there. Or,
I will say my in-laws and my parents all get along.
amazing.
Um, Unfortunately, no, that's a joke. Waiting for a fight. We're just waiting for a fight. No, that's just a
Family's an
joke.
adventure. There's relationship risks when we get together. We can't
Yeah.
just play it safe and control everything. With Thanksgiving, I call it a gritty gratitude, but 10 things I'm thankful for. When I was in survival mode, I'd write them down every day. And when you're with family, you might need to internally or even go around and say, hey, let's do a top 10 list, 10 things we're thankful for. And it's amazing how gratitude changes us, and it's physical. I mean, we sleep better, immune system strengthened. It's also mental health. It's hard to be anxious and grateful at the same time. It protects us from slander and gossip. Why? Because when you're thankful and you're bringing those positive words, like you're not going to be bringing the mean stuff at the same time. So, Carl, think of it as a time to grow. A lot of it is how you frame it. If you just say it's going to be the same thing over and over again, repeat, no, what did we learn? What can we do different? How can we grow? And I like to say where we work, we have an evaluative culture and we talk about what's good, what's not good, what's missing, what's confusing. You might need to think through, especially if your family is difficult, how can you make it a win? And then be intentional with it.
You have 4 kids. How does social media play a role into all of this? How
That's
old
a
are your kids?
Yeah, we have 4 teenagers. It's a
Okay.
great question. And, one thing we do with the kids is we open up in prayer. That can set the tone for the gathering too. We ask the kids to pray. And some of them pray really short. We joke that, one of them just says, God, thanks for the food and thanks for the good day. And it's like that's his go to prayer. And then we have another one that will pray for a couple of minutes. And I thank you for my guinea pigs. And I thank you for, the trampoline outside. So it's fun to kids pray. It's endearing. And sometimes that just brings down some of the walls. When the generations connect together, it's powerful. That unity, it's one of the deepest joys in life is when family gets along. For our kids, it does take some work to build that because the go-to for this generation is devices. I mean, the number of hours, 7 hours a day. And when do we set those screens down and get that personal connection? And also, what can we do that everyone enjoys? Like when we go to the movies, everyone's got a different vote. We go to a restaurant, everyone's got a different vote. So there's a lot of give and take in families. And I think for my wife and I, that's one thing we've had to do is try to enter into their world. I've got one son that likes to find things on OfferUp, fix them, flip them. I'm not a handyman. I don't understand motors, e-bikes, and I've learned so much from him and going on these trips with him, but I wouldn't naturally do that at all. I mean, I'm sports oriented, but none of my kids really, played high school sports. The youngest right now is starting to, but you can't control your kids and make them like you. At the same time, you got to celebrate. When we value other people and how they're different than us, when we value their strengths, when we build them up with those words, that goes a long ways. And for parents, I would say just saying, I love you, I appreciate you. You don't have to be just like me and giving them that freedom. That's what kids want to hear is that they're connected, they're noticed, and they're valued. And when
Do,
you bring that love, that goes such a long ways.
do you bring your kids to like church every Sunday, or do they want to come, or do they go kicking and screaming?
It's such a good question because here I am. I grew up with none of it. No church, no faith, nothing, no interest in that. And now here they are as pastors' kids. And what do you do? So some of them, and they hit different seasons. There's some seasons where they love it. They're having a great time. There's other seasons where they say, I want to sleep in. I don't want to go. And what do you do in those moments? What we've done, especially in the high school years, is they get to choose. So high school groups Sunday night, church is Sunday morning. We say, you pick one or the other. And they go back and forth. Sometimes they like to be with their friends and it's, at night, but then sometimes they just like to come in the morning and be the whole church family. And sometimes they don't want to come, but we've said, hey, you got to come. And when they push back and say, oh, you're forcing religion on me, we say, no, we're not forcing. It's your choice. It's a relationship with God. But just like we say, all right, in the house, we have family contributions. It's just in this house, we look out for each other. We look out physically. We wouldn't let you not eat food. Like we're going to have you eat some vegetables, not just dessert all day. So whether it's relational, physical, family contributions, church is just part of our rhythm. We value that, but there's some tension to walk through. And ultimately you want kids to own their own faith. It can't just be dad's faith or mom's faith. And that's a journey. And you got to have some encouragement along the way and also some freedom to make some decisions.
I really like what you just said there because I do think we all have to find our own path and we all have to find our own way forward. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off of the kids.
Yes, absolutely. When I was growing up, my stepdad's Jewish, so I have an uncle who's a rabbi, and I went to temple for a year, went to summer camp. The songs would stick with me. I'd sing them. I liked a lot of it. But, there was still parts I was trying to figure out. But I pushed God away and I just thought, I'm going to run after my stuff. And so it wasn't until later in life. Now I look back and appreciate it. So sometimes we're given good things early on. We don't really value them. But then later on, we're going to realize, my parents were a little smarter than I thought. Or, maybe there was something there with that faith stuff. And then, as I heard about Jesus, it was like that was the missing part of my life. And I had no clue for 18 years. So we don't always see it right away. And a lot of times, if we have people around us that just live it and we can see it. See, I wasn't reading a Bible, but I was reading a guy named Mike because he said he had faith. And so I'm going to read his life. And is there something there? And I could tell there was. And he was authentic, humble. So sometimes we see it through other people. Sometimes it's nature. You're in New England in the fall. You can't help miss the beauty. Like this isn't by accident. There's a creator and he's good and he's intelligent and this design is inspiring. And so we all have different places. I mean, there was someone who just shared their story and they came to church. They got baptized this Sunday. They came to church before this. They still drunk from the night before, but they stumbled into church and they realized like, I need God's love. And so it's not a formula. This is relationship and life is lively. And I just think it's the goodness that changes our hearts. It's God's goodness. Other people and their love too.
How did your mom and dad react to when you found Jesus? Because I imagine that they were not religious if you weren't religious.
Correct. You ask good questions, Carl. You like to get right in there. My parents, so my mom and my biological dad grew up Catholic and unfortunately had bad experiences both in family and church and in school. So they were done. They were pushing it away. I mean, my earliest memory was it was kind of like a joke, a game. Someone gave them a Bible and it was Gideon's. And then they tried to hide the Bible in their friend's apartment. And then the friends would hide the Bible in their car. So it was kind of like hot potato, get rid of the Bible, stick it on somebody else. And I made that decision. They weren't happy. They were surprised. I think in some ways it was a slap in the face to the family. It was like, what are you thinking? But over time, what we've done is we appreciate each other and we joke about it. We've got this weird sense of humor, Carl. My mother and I joke around, and when she's flying on a plane, I'll say to her, Mom, now, if the plane's going down, what are you going to do? And she says, I know, put my trust in Jesus. And then I say, and what else, Mom? And she's like, tell everyone else on the plane to follow Jesus. And so we just have some levity where it's like, we talk honestly, we talk deep.
Where's the stepdad come in?
And
the stepdad, where does he fit into this? Because he's Jewish.
Right. So he's Jewish. And at first it was tough for him to celebrate Christmas. That was new. That was different. Yeah. And then, he thought if I go become a pastor, I'm going to have to just kind of waste my education, turn off everything intellectually. And so that was one of his concerns. And I get it. It's like if you don't put your trust in Jesus as the Messiah, someone else, like your son, is going to now be all about that. Like, what are we stepping into? What I've found is that with my Jewish relatives, we have great conversations and so much in common, so much in common. I mean, really, the one thing that's different is Jesus the Messiah or not? Is he risen from the grave? And I'd say he is, and there's evidence, but we find that middle ground. And my stepdad, I don't want to speak everything for him. I'll let him pick, but he's more a cultural Jew than like a theological Jew and thinking about God. But we have a great relationship. A turning point for me when I came to know God is I said, I don't want to call you my stepdad. I want to call you my dad. And we're extremely close. And he's asked a lot of questions. And the questions have just continued over the years. And he likes to send me articles. And I'll joke with my parents because they're very generous. They're very kind. I tease them. I say, there you are. You're doing the Bible again. You're doing the Bible again. So we have fun with it, but he's been a blessing in my life. And, he doesn't always want to talk about spiritual things, but when he does, let's go deep. And I love those part of the conversations too.
So, going back to where we started on this Thanksgiving, how do we walk into our house and stay focused on making sure that we are thankful? Because I think that when I listen to you, you're all about gratitude. And
Yeah,
I think that you start with gratitude, and I think that is where you are, and I see that in you. So, how
yeah.
do we get to gratitude when it is really hard and we're looking around and we're not feeling grateful for anything?
That's right. And when I lived in Africa, it struck me because I had never been that close to poverty, AIDS, people dying, lack of jobs, and some of the corruption challenges there. And I couldn't figure out, why are people so joyful? How do they sing? How do they have so much love? Why are they so generous? The hospitality. It was like they were thrilled I was there and they were inspiring. And what I realized, what hit me then, is that gratitude is not about how much you have. Because a lot of people could count their blessings and it would be a long list, but they're not necessarily thankful. And gratitude is more about a decision. Gratitude and hospitality is about what you have in your heart, not in your home. It's not about how big your home is, how clean your home is. Don't get distracted on the petty things. It's about relationships. Hospitality is the love that you bring. And it's not just in your home, but you can bring that in the workplace too. People in Africa, they would just genuinely look at me with love and joy and warmth. And I was accepted, and there was a connection there from day one. And I thought, I want to live this out the rest of my life. And so it is a choice. It's a choice we can all make. And, when you don't give thanks, what happens? Grumbling and complaining. There was a generation in the wilderness that literally died there. They didn't go into the promised land. They were grumbling and complaining. It's a gateway for all kinds of bad decisions. And when you stop being thankful, things start to dry up. You're not full of life anymore. You don't have that abundance and that overflow. And so start with your own soul, start with your own mind, start with your own heart, and come in thankful, be committed to being thankful. And as you live that out, it's easier to pull people down than to pull them up. So you can't control everything around you. But what's going to happen? You're going to change the culture. I showed up on a team playing soccer. I still like to play. I run around in the field now, but it was one that was a lot of silence, independence, not much celebration. And I decided I'm going to start saying, good job, nice play, good pass. Saw that extra effort on defense. And I just started doing that for a few years. And then even at halftime, when guys would come off the field, I'm going to head towards them and name specific plays and stuff. And things started to change. Other people starting to do that. So it might not happen right away, but that doesn't mean it's not worth it. So stay the course, be determined. I say, trust God with the results, but just keep doing the next right thing. Do the next right thing. And God's grace is sufficient. And God has made us a light. And the darker the darkness gets, the light needs to get brighter. Even in a dark room, Carl, if you just have a little night light in the side of the room, it's a lot of light. So a little bit of light goes a long ways. Not everyone's going to thank you and say, oh, I appreciate that, but they won't miss it. That's the one thing about family. They don't miss it. And when you're real and you start to make changes, they see it and they notice it. And I've seen a lot of transformation in my family over the decades.
You have traveled across America, traveled across Europe, Africa. You spent a lot of time talking to a lot of people. Where do you think we are today?
That's a great question, Carl. I think America right now is at a crossroads. If I was being honest, I think we're at a crossroads, and I think we've got some important foundational decisions to make. Now, of course, I'm going to start with the faith piece, which, we say, in God we trust. That's our national motto. And I'm like, is that lip service? Is that controversial? Where do we really stand? Most people say there's a God. And with our maker, do we want to honor him, walk with him, know him, or are we going to do our own thing? When I've seen people, their lives changed by Jesus, and that's here in Seattle, homeless people coming to know Jesus, and the change in their lives, prison ministry we had, come to know Jesus. We call it the Jesus factor. When you have God in your life, when you know you're loved by God, you start to forgive and love other people. I haven't seen in America that we can do that without a deeper connection. So we've got to shift from individualism, because right now the culture, it's me, what makes me feel good. I'm going to do me. And we've got to shift, and we got to look bigger, and we've got to start thinking about we. On all the teams I've played on, the championship teams, it's culture, it's in the locker room, and there's a sense of togetherness. There's a sense of we. And in America, I think we've got to learn how to love our neighbors. I mean, that's what Jesus said. It's like the Levite and the priest walked by this man who's beaten up, and they don't care. And it's shocking because you think the Levite and the priest will do that. But no, the Samaritan is the one who crosses the other side of the road. And crossing the other side of the road means leaving our comfort zone. It means taking that relationship risk. It means being generous. It means being unselfish. You don't have unity without humility. And I think there's a lot of humility missing. When you're ranting and pointing fingers and, you're constantly blaming and tearing people down all the time, hey, whether it's in person or social media, you're like, let's not do that. There's a better way. And it takes humility to have unity in families. So check the pride. And then for our nation right now, it comes down to simple things. I mean, there was so many commands, and they said, Jesus, what's most important? He said, love God with all your strength, soul, heart, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, we don't need to make it too complicated. Start by loving your neighbor. And when you do that well, then what starts to happen? The heart changes, then the home changes, then the community changes, the city changes, and the nation changes.
But then, and I not trying to argue here with you, but then how
Yeah.
do you go with when you have Judaism, Catholicism, Christianity, Islam? You've got
Yeah.
all these different religions, and and everyone's in their corner. So how do we get out of our corners and connect?
Yes. And Carl, as I study the religions at Dartmouth, there's some common ground. Love your neighbor is a great place to start. Common ground. We can do things together. We can serve together. We can appreciate each other. And that connection's important. It's like a foundational piece. Love your neighbor. What we're not going to change in that is when we say naively, all these religions are the same. No, there's not. Intellectually, if you have integrity, you can't say there's no God, there's one God, and there's a million gods. It's like, no. If you say there's one God, it's like, well, is Jesus risen? Is he the savior, or is he still in the grave? So we've got to be able to have those conversations, but have the maturity to love people that disagree with us and have the maturity and the self-control to not be violent, not be mean. And it's a growing up. It's a growing up. And so if we're immature, if we're selfish, if we are cruel with our words, what you're going to see is all kinds of division and strife. And we've got to break some cultural norms right now, because the culture says cancel the people. They're less than you. They're not important. Even violence is predominant in a lot of cities where that tension exists. And so we've got to, in my words, I'd say follow Jesus's example. But who's your example? Who's your example that you're going to live like? And then for us to figure it out as a country, I mean, America could go one of like 10 ways right now. And Carl, I appreciate you having these conversations. If we can't talk, we're not going to get very far. And so
Correct.
we've got to be able to talk and share. And Carl, if you say something I disagree with, I've got to have a love for you that's greater than the statement I disagree with. And same for you and I. And I mean, that's what this conversation is rich. I mean, this isn't your classic pastor podcast. I mean, you're taking a risk on this wild guy in Seattle. So I so appreciate your heart. And that's what I hear with so many of your questions is just like, how can we do better as a
Yeah.
country? How can we be part of the solution? How can we love our neighbors? It doesn't mean we agree, but it does mean that there's something greater than just trying to win the argument or put someone down or see people as second class. I mean, when Jesus came, he elevated women aren't second rate, children aren't second rate. Now, we might hear that and think, oh, well, of course. But in the culture at the time, that was so radical. Samaritans aren't second rate, Gentiles aren't second rate. And so we're all equal. Like that's a common ground starting point. And
Yeah.
those are some key pieces we've got to highlight.
So as we wrap up here, you have a podcast. Do you want to tell us about that or anything
Sure.
else you want to promote?
Yeah, we've got a site called justchoosehope.org. And for me, when I was discovering faith, I wanted a place I could go that was safe and just be able to check things out. So justchoosehope.org. The podcast is called The Bonfire. I believe that God lights a fire in our souls. We're not just called to play it safe and go through the motions. Religion isn't that satisfying. It's not about rules and rituals. So that fire, that passion, don't live life without purpose and passion. So The Bonfire is the podcast. The book I wrote is called The Power of the Second Thought. We talked about that earlier. And if you want to go deeper in that, I work with athletes, sports psychology, the renewal of the mind, power of the second thought. Thanks for letting me mention some of those. Whatever's beneficial. Just Choose Hope. Everything's free. Bonfire free. So if you need a copy of the book, I'll send you one free. There's no money trail here. I get a simple pay from the church, but it's just I just want to give whatever's helpful for people and practical too.
Pastor Jesse Bradley, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you for joining me as well. And if you enjoy this, remember to look down, hit the subscribe button. And until the next time,